you're talking about moving my kid from a resource room to a self-contained classroom. Why? What's the issue? What's the data saying? Why are you doing this? And you hope that they have a solid reason, a solid justification for that move.
One of the main parts of the special education services is the least restrictive environment. So we're going to talk about all the different levels that your son, daughter, or student may be receiving, things of that nature, so you are fully aware of what your child is going to be classified under and where they're going to be placed in a school.
This is a very, very important part of your child's educational experience. And as a school system, you have to have a lot of things in place to handle these different environments. So the top there, it says least restrictive environment, LRE, describes a student's educational placement in relation to their non-disabled peers. So general education classes is at the top. That's your goal. You want a student to be in all general education classes if possible. And that's where the non-disabled peers part of that comes into play. General education classes are your basics, your four basics, math, English, or reading in elementary, science and social studies. And then you're going to have electives thrown in there for your middle school up through high school students also. That is the general ed classes. They do follow federal and state learning standards. Each state has their own learning standards in place. The federal Department of Education has learning standards in place, and students are expected to reach those. What makes special education special is kids who need an IEP generally have a lot of difficulty reaching those standards. So there's a gap between where they're at age-wise, cognitive ability-wise, and the standard. So special education can be used to close that gap. And this continuum of services here, the least restrictive environment, is designed to individualize and meet the student's needs. So after general education classes with no supports, we then go to an inclusion model. Inclusion usually is when a special education teacher supports within the general ed classroom. You're going to get team teaching between a general education teacher and a special education support teacher. This is probably the most prevalent, the most optimal type of service out there. You get your quote unquote expert teacher, specifically in the middle school through high school. You're going to have, in science, you're going to have biology, you're going to have chemistry, you're going to have physics, you're going to have earth science. There's going to be a number of different experts teaching these contents. In math, you're going to have algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, some pre-algebra stuff, some trigonometry, and there are people specifically certified to teach those. And for children with IEPs in an inclusion setting, the special education teacher can go in and team teach with that general ed teacher, and the IEP will be written in a manner that the kid is supported within the general education classroom. Generally, it is going to be your children with specific learning disabilities that are going to get this service. The next step in the least restrictive environment, following general ed inclusion, is going to be a resource room. And in a resource room, students are pulled out of their regular classes to meet with a resource teacher, once again, to address specific learning disabilities. Kid might be a very strong reader, but something has caused them to have a very difficult time crunching numbers, understanding abstract concepts in math. And the resource room can be utilized for the student to be pulled out specifically for one class or maybe two. And this is the next logical step in the least restrictive environment. Following that, you're going to get into more of a situation in the next category, which is self-contained. You're going to get more in a situation where a kid is going to need to be pulled out for all their core educational classes: math, reading, English language arts, science, social studies. Because of an assessed IQ score, they may have an intellectual disability, they may have multiple disabilities, and these are usually found within the general education. The public school where they would normally go if they didn't have more severe issues. So a self-contained classroom, students are taught by special education teachers with other special education students only. So this is a complete pullout from the general ed curriculum. And there are alternative curriculums in place in every state. No, I don't want to say every state. I know here in the state of Pennsylvania, there are alternative standards set for students with IEPs and intellectual disabilities to follow. These are going to be more of your life skills students, students with IQs 70 and below. We'll get into, once again, the different categories here in a little while and cover that so you understand what a child brings or what a child's category or identification is. And it also is very much interwoven with this least restrictive environment situation we're talking about. So felt it was vital we talk about this first. So after the self-contained classroom, you're going to move out of the public school building and you're going to go to separate schools. Students attend schools specifically for students with disabilities. The current school I'm teaching in is a school that serves students with autistic support diagnoses and emotional support diagnoses. So when you write their IEP, you're going to note in there that they have an emotional disturbance or they have autism. And these schools are needed. These schools are necessary to serve the needs of students with emotional disturbance, severe categories of disabilities, physical. Some children with that have hearing issues, vision issues, are served better and more proficiently in separate schools. The school I'm in, some of the children are there because their behaviors are very difficult to deal with, where they become verbally abusive, physically abusive. They're sometimes going to be. They get so upset that they may destroy some property within the building. They get into situations where they lose control of their temper, lose control of their emotions, and in a public school setting, not that they aren't prepared or capable of dealing with that. It's just it is a very, very loud thing that happens sometimes, and the kids are better served in a place where it's safer. The staff are specifically trained to deal with the overt behaviors, the physical aggression, the verbal aggression, the behaviors that are associated with some children classified as autistic and emotional disturbance. And these schools are specifically geared to handle these situations and allow the children to still go after reaching the standards from the state or the alternative standards from the state. And they're going to be able to provide the students' needs in a place that the students, and I've seen students in these programs really thrive because the public school setting is just not the best fit for them. And sometimes these placements in these schools will come from a parent insisting on it, and they want their child placed, or the school also has that option of placing their child in it. Some students come after being possibly expelled from a school for a severe incident, and these schools are prepared to handle these situations. At the bottom, The most restrictive environment is going to be a residential placement where students permanently reside at their school for special needs. And these are this is the absolute most restrictive placements. Some students with some mental health issues may end up in a hospital setting for either a short period of time or an extended period of time. And they need to be placed residentially, either sometimes by a judge or a magistrate, or a county service related service agency. There is a need for places of this nature, and these are sometimes very difficult places for children to be, sometimes very difficult places to work. I worked at a residential treatment facility for a year as a teacher, but I did work on the residential side also, and it can be very trying, very, very difficult to navigate working in a place of this nature. So on the left side there, you see, once again, least restrictive. The student is placed with mostly general education students. All the way to the bottom, the students in place with mostly other special education students. It's the most restrictive. In the IEP, which is another, going back to this, is another part of Public Law 94-142. The IEP has to be in place. You were right. There's a section that deals with the least restrictive environment. And for children below this part here, where they go into separate schools or residential placements, there are specific boxes to check, and there are specific things that have to be written in there as to why the child is placed there, and what the name of the facility is. Is it there's a place to check on there. Is this the school where the student would be normally attend if they weren't classified under special education? And then you have to put specific data and information in there for those IEPs. So just again, a quick review of least restrictive environment. Very important part of the IEP process, a very important part of your child's educational experience.